Hey there. As a language learner myself, I'm working on Spanish and German right now. I like to pass on tips or suggestions that help me in case you might find them useful. One piece of advice that I can give you is how hard we must, I'm going to say work, how hard we must study, how hard we must find time to speak? No. How hard we must control our negative self-talk. Yes, the things that we say to ourselves. I would imagine that most of your discouragement with English, as well as mine, comes from the kind of words I tell myself. A tip that I learned in counseling is for us to pause and say, the story I'm telling myself is, I should be making more progress in Spanish than I'm doing. Or, by now, I should be able to speak pretty well. We tell ourselves a story. This applies in any situation, whether when you're trying to work out problems in your relationship with your partner or your spouse, you can say, the story I'm telling myself is, I'm not doing enough to please you. Is that correct? And then the other person, you haven't accused them of anything. You haven't said anything about their behavior, but you allow them to speak truth into your life. We do the same thing with our words. The story I'm telling myself is, and if it's negative, then we need to change that. So the first tip is be aware, be conscious of what you tell yourself, the story you narrate or the story you tell. And speaking of narration or storytelling, they mean the same thing. I've been using a technique recently where I listen to a podcast several times. I have found some good short stories in German. Each story lasts about 7 or 8 minutes. I listen twice and then I retell or I narrate the story using my own German as best I can. Then I listen a third time and tell the story again. That is giving me practice. And I do it out loud. If I do it silently in my head, I drift off. I stop. Doing it out loud keeps me going. I've even heard it said that you should speak out loud your language in front of a mirror so you don't stop speaking. But I've just been doing it at my desk or on a walk. And speaking about walks, here's another way I narrate and a useful tool. If you have an Apple product like an iPhone or an iPad or a Mac computer, you know about who Siri is, the AI, artificial intelligence helper. The way I use her is to say, hey, and her name, how do you say in German, he got fired? And then she comes back and she has a clip or a short piece of a German speaker saying the German. I can even look at my phone to see it if I want. So the other day I was out on a walk and I thought, I'm going to narrate or tell what's going on with me today. What am I doing today? And I was talking about reading a message from somebody and how they got fired. So that's what I asked Siri to help me with. Another tip that is useful has to do with grammar. Now, I'm not a conventional teacher or learner. When I taught French in the classroom to kids ages 11 to 18, I did not focus on grammar. I focused on storytelling because stories capture our imagination and the language would just go in. You might see my cat Gizmo. So what I do with grammar is every day, and I've told you this, I write in my diary. I write a paragraph in German in my diary. I write it first in my German, and then I ask ChatGPT to correct my writing. And the person usually shows me what I did wrong and the correction. And if I don't understand the grammar, like why this and not that, then I type out a question and I get an answer. I get clarification. I understand. What I like about this, as opposed to studying grammar in general, is that it's very tiny, very specific, and what is useful to me at the time. It doesn't just go over my head. I have asked a question. That means there is space in my brain for an answer, for an explanation. I think that is the best way to learn grammar, to want to understand why something is the way it is. So those are my tips about narration, what you tell to yourself, and how you can narrate or storytell out loud for practice, how I use Siri, and what place grammar instruction has in the life of a language learner. Those are my tips right now, December 2024. What about you? If there is something that's really helping you with English, please pass it on. Leave a comment below this video. And that's it for this episode of English Without Fear. I'll talk to you next time.